Hi Dixons, I'm Mike Croller, Senior Coaching Head of Department at Dixon's Trinity Academy and Teacher of Spanish at Dixon's Sixth Form.
And I'm Adam Clough, I'm the Instruction Lead and Head of French at Dixon's Trinity Chapeltown.
And today we're going to look at coaching. Now I've been involved in a number of forms of coaching over the years. The instructional coaching that we predominantly use at Dixon's is, I believe, the best that I've been part of in my career. It's current, focusing on what part of instructional practice is important right now. It's bespoke, pitched at the career stage of the colleague and also where they are in terms of their journey at Dixon's. And it also promotes talent first. Each and every one of us at Team Dixon's can get that bit better each day. To give you an idea of this in action, the coaching model that we use is based around that of Paul Bambrick-Santoyo, as covered in the book Leverage Leadership. And it's known that the six-step model is an effective weekly cycle of short, frequent observations, basically about 10 minutes, and dedicated instructional coaching, time between coach and coachee of about 20 to 25 minutes. There are numerous benefits to this model. Firstly, it helps to internalise norms. That's really helpful when you are joining a Dixon's Academy with a strong common language. For example, the values and the drivers. The older students will know these better than you at first, even year 8. But secondly, it allows practice for automaticity. It's a chance for teachers to practice their instruction with the safety and tutelage of their coach, but without the audience of a full class of students. You wouldn't send a tennis player out onto centre court to practice their backhand. It's a fundamental part of professional development to practice. I'd say that this form of live practice has been one of the most striking things since I joined Dixon's. Research says that it takes 14 weeks to break a bad habit or form a new habit. The more we can do this outside of the classroom via, say, coaching or morning practice, the more prepared and agile we become. Perhaps most importantly, the process is non-judgmental. It's not there to judge teaching. In fact, I would say that instructional coaching is more a test of the coach to skillfully and judiciously select the next step of highest leverage, the one next step, the one thing that will have immediate impact and benefit in the classroom or on a colleague's role. Furthermore, to plan the coaching session for maximum impact. If necessary, preparing examples, microscripting, scaffolding, or sometimes doing some pre-reading. It's also flexible. We can spend 2 to 3 weeks on the same next step if necessary. We simply update the colleague's tracker with a success and a next step each week. The granular detail allows us to see what progress the coachee has made over a period of time. In the next observation, we will try and see if the coachee has developed or completed their next step from the previous week.
So, as Mike just said, instructional coaching has numerous and really palpable benefits. And in a survey that Ambition carried out, 75% of school middle leaders strongly agreed that incremental and instructional coaching helped drive forward improvement of standards in their respective schools. But it's really worth pointing out that a successful introduction of a purposeful and impactful instructional coaching model doesn't happen automatically. And I would say that there are two main factors at play here. First of all is the school culture. Second of all is that the coaching meetings themselves are focused and purposeful. So if I start with culture, I would say that at the core of instructional coaching is one simple idea, and that's feedback. And staff and students alike understand and really do internalise the message that useful feedback from others is something of incredible value. Successes and next steps are actually part of the daily discourse, and it really is every day. Coaching sessions, staff practice sessions, teach meets, and all of these things speak to one common idea. We are all getting better, all of the time, as a team. When staff are used to and really do value the power of feedback, instructional coaching does help them to fly. But in order to implement any system effectively, staff also need to be given two things: the time and the tools. And at Dixon's, leaders at all levels of the organisation are given protected time, so that's full periods set aside on their timetables, and Mike will talk about this in a second. And that time is given to conduct coaching sessions. This sends a really clear message that coaching is just as important a part of your day as your teaching. Secondly, we are given a 6-step coaching framework as per Leverage Leadership, which Mike alluded to earlier. And this allows us to conduct high-quality, purposeful coaching sessions that have a real impact in the classroom. And the progress I see in early career teachers at our school is phenomenal. And I strongly believe that this is due in part to the coaching framework that we use. Paul Bambrick-Santoyo is very clear about the impact of this model actually in his book and this creation of dialogue and feedback. He says, by receiving weekly observations and feedback, a teacher gets as much development in 1 year as most receive in 20. So what is this framework? Well, the first step is praise. After observing the coachee in practice at some point prior to the meeting, the coach will have identified a success. They will then narrate the positives by delivering precise praise for 1 minute. This reinforces positive actions and is an opportunity to celebrate what is going really well. Second part of the process is probe. It's so important that we get the process of probing right. It's an opportunity to check for understanding and to allow your coachee to reflect on their next step. It's usually a great idea to zoom straight into the moment of the lesson that you want to focus on and then present it back to the member of staff. So you might say something like, I'd really love to talk about the moment when. It's quite a good opening line. If the teacher is able to identify their next step straight away, that's brilliant. But if not, you might have to ask further questions. For example, you might ask, do you remember in class when X happened? Or what did that do to the learning? What happened in this moment? If the coach is still unable to identify their next step, you just need to state what you observed. There is no problem, there's nothing wrong with just telling them what their next step is if the other questions fail to elicit the response you were looking for. The third step is giving your coachee their next step. So their next step must be a high leverage action that is incremental, clear, measurable, and bite-sized. So is it incremental? Will this help the teacher to develop quickly and effectively? Is it clear and measurable? Can you measure if the teacher has made the change easily? And what evidence will you have of improvement? Is it bite-sized? If you haven't made progress towards the change in a week or a couple of weeks, the next step probably isn't small enough. The fourth part of the 6-part model is the thing that I'm most excited about, and I think the thing that really defines this coaching model, and it's practice. Perhaps the element missing in a lot of schools is the process of providing the coachee with an opportunity to act on their next step through a role-play scenario. So first, the coach will simulate and model how to make progress towards the next step that's been identified. Secondly, the coachee will assume the role of teacher and practice their next step. As they are practicing their next step, the coach can provide live coaching, which may involve re-practicing the next step until it's perfect. This usually takes around 8 minutes. The fifth part of the 6-part model is to plan ahead. I once heard that sitting through a useful CPD session and then failing to act on the information you received in it is like going to a supermarket for your weekly shop and then going home with nothing. It's a bit of an odd analogy, but it always sticks in my brain. The fifth step of our coaching model, therefore, involves creating a clear opportunity for staff to act on their next step in front of the children. The coach and the coachee will design or revise an upcoming lesson plan to implement their next step. There must be total clarity for both parties around what will be said and what will be done so that the next step can be acted on really effectively. And finally, the 6th part of our 6-part model is really simple but crucial. Both the coach and the coachee must agree to a time where observations will take place so the coach can observe the coachee acting on their next step. If the next step hasn't been closed, if the gap hasn't been closed, then it continues to be a next step until the coachee has made sufficient progress.
In terms of promoting and supporting the coaching model, it is important that the model is presented and modelled at the start of the year to all stakeholders and represented at regular points, coaches and coachees alike. This promotes status, clarity and accountability of roles. We block out the coaching slot on staff timetables to ensure that the time is sacrosanct and protected. Typically, the coach can observe in non-contact time, but if a coach cannot watch the coachee teach, say if a Year 11 class is on and there are timetable clashes, then the senior leadership or teaching and learning group can facilitate cover for the 10 minutes so that the observation can happen. Whilst the lion's share of our coaching at Dixon's is about instruction inside the classroom, our model at Dixon's is flexible enough so that if what is important right now for a new middle leader or an assistant head of department is, say, compiling cohort analysis or writing an intervention plan, then we can do this, but always coming back to putting classroom instruction at its heart at regular intervals. Ultimately, as a coachee, to receive half a lesson each week of protected time, of one-to-one support pitched at what I need to develop, it's for me very, very valuable time. But it is a huge pleasure and responsibility to be a coach. It requires self-determination, sound judgment, the ability to invest in people, colleagues, professionals, the people you work with in Dixons every day. Thanks for watching and happy coaching.